Yo, what's good, YouTube? This is Jay from TNJ, and welcome to the Packers franchise. As you can see from the title of this video, we have some maybe unfortunate news depending on who you are, but let's just hop straight into it. The Packers franchise is coming to an end, and there are a ton of reasons that I want to talk about in this video, and you know, a lot of it is all over the place with Madden, and let's just start from the beginning. You know, when Madden first came out this year, this was the first year they really sold us on franchise updates. We obviously saw, you know, the free agency updates that they made. They introduced player tags and motivations, and that was actually a pretty good improvement at its core. It was a really good idea, and it really was going to help the team building aspect, not only for, you know, your team that you're building with, but also CPU teams as well. So that definitely brought, you know, a lot of interest to the mode again. It wasn't, you know, groundbreaking as far as franchise goes, but it was a really good update. And free agency obviously has been an issue with Madden in the past, and this year's was actually like a good improvement overall. Like, I would have taken this Madden's free agency over the previous like 5 or 6, whatever it was, ever since they haven't even, you know, changed free agency. But I actually like it. I also did like the feature of the contracts and being able to offer, you know, a normal offer, a player-friendly deal, really player-friendly deal, a team-friendly deal. That was actually really good. And those were ideas that were good at its core, but we'll start to talk about, you know, the issues with those features in the rest of this video. But let's just start at the beginning. You know, when this came out, everybody was going into franchise, playing franchise, and the community really oversaturated it to a point where, you know, my views were suffering. And I'm not complaining or anything like that, but like, I do a franchise every single year, and this year's franchise hit probably like more than half of the numbers that I would hit in years past, like the last 3 years. So that definitely affected, you know, my motivation a little bit. I don't really always do series for views, but let's be honest, like, if a series isn't getting the views that I think it should, it's gonna have a pretty short life. Now let's just talk about the gameplay, and this is in specific to, you know, franchise as a whole too, not just the Madden gameplay, but at its core, the issue that I had with this franchise in specific, and I guess this Madden, is that the gameplay, it gets really repetitive at its core. If you really don't have like a defensive dominant player, you can pretty much run the same offense against every single opponent that you face, and that is an issue because there are plays that, you know, will work against the CPU. Everybody plays it the same. The CPU isn't smart at adapting at all. You can honestly run the same play up and down the field every single drive, and the CPU just won't stop it. There are things you can do to obviously stop yourself from doing that. It is a video game, but I'm telling you, at the beginning of this series, I thought it was going to be like extremely difficult. I was getting rid of Aaron Rodgers. I was getting rid of, obviously Lazard at the time was the #1 receiver for the Packers, probably not anymore in real life. I got rid of Kenny Clark. I got rid of everybody on the defense that really made the Packers, and I brought the overall down probably over 10 points. Like, it was a significant change. I was going with Jordan Love, who was at the time, what, like 60 something overall. I mean, he was not good at all. It was supposed to be a challenge, but I made the playoffs in year 1 with a terrible team. I even included some of my subscriber prospects or subscriber recruits into this series as well to be undrafted free agents, and they ended up actually being pretty decent, which is cool. I'm not mad at that, but what I am mad at is that it should not have been that easy to make the playoffs. Even though I did not win a playoff game, it should not have been that easy to make the playoffs right away, especially in a division with the Vikings that are rated way higher than us. They should have been killing us in the division. They never had a true winning season in the division. That's an issue. When schemes matter a lot more than the actual players on the teams, yes, they both matter together. But if there's a huge difference between the best team in the division, which is the Vikings, and then the Packers, Lions, and Bears are rated way lower than they are, they should run away with the division. They should have a winning record. But instead, it turned into this series where everybody in my division was beating up on each other, and that is just not fun. Especially when we're not close talent-wise, we're not close scheme-wise. So why are we all the same? So that was one of the bigger issues, is that like I just could not be competitive. I mean, I had to dumb down my gameplay or make the CPU gameplay a lot more difficult with sliders and everything I tried. And I honestly had to like rein myself back a lot of times. I couldn't enjoy the features of the game even during free agency, which we'll get to in a little bit. So let's talk about, just what I think are the big franchise as a whole downfalls this year and maybe even going forward. So I obviously talked about making the playoffs, but I think that injuries is a big one. If you look around the NFL today, every single week when you play fantasy football, you know this, there are tons of players on every team that go into every game questionable or probable or doubtful or whatever the case may be. That does not happen in Madden. There is no questionable. There is no probable. It's either you're playing, you're healthy, or you're not. And the only way you get to a certain point where like a guy does not play in a given week is if he gets hurt in practice, which is, I guess, okay. But even when they get hurt in practice, they should still be able to go during game time. It should be a game time decision whether or not they go. And if they do, if they're dinged up, they should have an attribute hit. There should be a penalty for playing hurt players. But in this game, there is none of that. Also, in real life, there are injuries that are just beyond one game. There are like 4-week injuries. A good example I like to think of are the quarterbacks that got hurt last year and this year. Think of Russell Wilson, who got hurt with the Seattle Seahawks last year. He hurt his thumb. He ended up coming back like a whole month earlier than what he was supposed to, and obviously his gameplay was affected. He wasn't the same quarterback. Dak Prescott, same injury this year. I believe it was the same injury, but he came back a couple weeks early. What were they doing when he came back? They were running the football because he could not throw the football well, and a lot of quarterbacks do that. They get hurt either in a game or whatever, and they're just not the same throwing the football. Even Aaron Rodgers this year hurt his thumb, and yes, he's still pretty good. Obviously not the Rodgers that we're used to, but you can obviously see that he's affected by it. So like injuries like that kind of need to happen. Like they just need to happen. And a good model of that is NBA 2K, where they have injuries. They have the injury history. You can see, nagging injuries, all of that, and attributes are affected. So moving on from injuries a little bit, let's just talk about immersion. Franchise in Madden has zero immersion. Unless you do the manual work yourself to feel immersed, you just are not immersed. If you go back to like the old NCAA football games that had even the Sports Illustrated covers, the old Madden games, even like I remember like one of the first, I believe it was Madden 25, I believe, even had kind of like the newspaper type of franchise UI where you could see, what's going on around the league. You can see draft stories, all of that type of stuff. That's missing from the current Madden. Now you have to scroll over to the news page and it's just text, a bunch of text to read. Like nobody's going to go through all the text. We want images. We want, updates about like, hey, who's the passing leaders? Who is moving up in the standings? Is there a big injury around the league? Are the Bills looking for a big pass rusher at the deadline? Are the Browns selling out in the season? Are they trading away their entire roster? Are they trying to get rid of everybody? There should be like things like that immerse you into the Madden franchise experience, and that is just missing right now. And maybe it's something they add in the future. And I think EA is actually very lucky that they have the exclusive simulation rights to the NFL, because if 2K ever got their hands on that, and if I was NFL, I don't see why you would want EA to be the exclusive partner. Why not have 2 exclusive partners and have them duke it out? I mean, 2K would probably overtake the throne for the NFL. So let's move on from immersion. One thing that really does bother me is the CPU draft logic, and they really did try to address this with the player tags, but it just did not work. And the reason why it did not work is because it literally did not work. There was an instance in my season 1 of the franchise here with the Packers that Tua Tagovailoa and Teddy Bridgewater are on the same team, same overall. Tua had the future quarterback tag. Teddy Bridgewater had the bridge. And for some reason, they started Teddy Bridgewater for an entire season. That cannot and should not happen. They were the exact overall. So that means right there that the tags did not work, because I believe the quarterback of the future tag says this person will start over similar rated guys, and that just did not happen. Maybe it was just a fluke, but that was one instance where it happened. But even then, even when those player tags were on certain players, the CPU draft logic did not work very well. I tried to run through a test draft when I was doing season 1, and I was just looking at the players they were picking. I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense. So I had to go in there and manually pick guys at each spot. I had to go ahead and take control of every team and make the draft pick that made sense. And that's kind of how I had to run it. So I don't think the CPU draft logic is still there. Let's just stick on the draft, and let's just talk about late round draft picks. Overalls are still the end all be all to if a player will start a depth chart. The player tags just simply don't work. I just explained that. But every single year in the NFL in real life, there are 4th, 5th, and even 6th round draft picks on maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 teams that have like some elite starter at the end of the year. We're talking about like, how do all these teams pass up on this guy? That won't happen in Madden because they come in too low of overall, and that low overall never gives them the chance to start. And even if they come in, let's just say a CPU team has, you know, a roster spot hole at strong safety. They draft like a 69 overall strong safety in like the 5th round. He has a tremendous year. Let's just say he wins rookie of the year. That team will go out the next year in free agency and sign a strong safety over that guy. Like, it just does not make any sense. There just needs to be something tuned with, you know, having guys that, you know, blossom into starters and have really good years, that they may get like an overall boost or like an expectation boost or something like that. There just needs to be something around that. I kind of like to do that in my own series. Like, I used to do it in, I forgot exactly what series it was, but I would basically give boosts to overachievers and underachievers. So if you were an overachiever, you would get an attribute boost. And if you were an underachiever, I would take away some ratings if you were expected to do a certain way and did not end up doing that way. One other part I want to talk about is free agency. I noticed that every team is in cap hell after like year 1. And then I have the pick of the litter in free agency, whatever guy I want to go after. And that kind of bothered me a little bit, because there was a time when, you know, Madden actually was competitive in free agency, and they tried to do that this year, but now everybody ends up in like cap hell after like year 1, year 2. And it essentially leads to players like Justin Herbert hitting free agency. Like, that should never, ever happen. And that's just, you know, something that needs to be fixed. Also, I found that, you know, since that happens, there are like elite players. Like, I'm talking Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson was a perfect example in my Green Bay Packers series. He went to the Cardinals. He signed on a 1-year minimal deal. He was making less than $1 million. And that's because he wasn't picked up in free agency. Nobody picked him up. I had the chance to pick him up. I could have made an all-star team for the Packers, but I decided not to do it because obviously I'm not going to cheat the game. So that's definitely got to be fixed. Obviously, one big one was the draft bug, and that affected a lot of community guys where the draft, where their series would reset back to the draft. That didn't happen for me, but I definitely saw other people that did encounter the bug. that definitely had to be fixed. And I don't even know if they fixed it yet, to be honest. There's just maybe workarounds. But let's move on from that one. And I want to talk about a big one. And this is the teams never get better. They never get better. Now, I want to give a big example in my Packers franchise. The Chicago Bears, after season 1, went out and signed the following players: Odell Beckham, Juju Smith-Schuster, Derwin James, and Elton Jenkins, all in the same free agency. And they actually lost more games in that season. They didn't lose anybody to free agency. They didn't lose anybody. But all of a sudden, they get those 5 guys and they end up losing more games. It doesn't make any sense. I didn't understand that at all. Like, how do you have this great of a free agency? They even drafted a pretty good first round guard, which I had to draft for them, but they drafted a pretty good first round guard, like, to help out their offensive line. I mean, they were stacked on both offense and defense, and they end up losing more games. It just doesn't make any sense. How are teams not getting any better? And a lot of you guys probably say it's because of scheme. Why does scheme matter that much? It just should not. And yes, there are times when very, very talented football teams end up doing bad. It doesn't happen that often, though. It just does not happen that often. Usually, if you're a great team, you're going to be great. That's just how it is. You know, one thing that's always bothered me also in franchise is that running backs never get signed. Like, running backs will just sit there, never get signed. Doesn't make any sense. And just a lot of signings just don't make sense. Like, in my Packers franchises following this past year, Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor switched teams. It makes zero sense. They both got paid. Why even switch it up like that? Like, why would the Titans go out and sign Jonathan Taylor to the same deal that they would have signed Derrick Henry to? It just does not make sense. And that was one of the things that bothered me in free agency as well. So just the CPU team building, it just needs to be a lot better. And just the simulation as well, just with determining who's going to win a football game, it just doesn't make any sense. How can, the Vikings end up third in the division with 3 bad teams in the NFC North? It just does not make any sense. So I'm done with critiquing franchise. There's a lot more, like even things like, practice is just pretty bland. You just, pick your focus or whatever, pick your focus players. There's no drills that you do to earn points. There's nothing like that. That stuff needs to come back. Hopefully it does with the new college football game coming out next year. Hopefully, but we'll see. A lot of that stuff just needs to be overhauled, and I think franchise, while I'm happy they made some strides to make it better, I think some things just need to be stripped out and I think just need to be made new. I think that's how it's going to improve, but I'm not sure exactly. There are stakeholders with Madden. They obviously have bosses. The developers don't make the decisions. Obviously, there are people that do make the decisions, and it's money based. I mean, if Madden keeps making the money that they're making, they're not going to put in the effort that the community is asking for, because why not? They're still making the same money, and I think that's where they're at. I mean, the microtransactions, those really do make the money. The MUT Ultimate Team, all of the competitive game modes and things like that have to do with buying coins and things like that, in-game currency. I think that's always going to rule over franchise, and that's the big thing with Madden that we have to accept. That I think that's how it's always going to be until there is another exclusive partner that can be a simulation partner for the NFL. So, in closing, the Green Bay Packers franchise is dead, and I don't even have any motivation to just simulate, to be honest with you, and just to see, what the careers of the guys go, how they go. I'm more happy with NCAA football. NCAA football is just a lot more fun, even all these years later. That just says a lot about Madden. There's just not a lot here to be excited about going forward. And yes, I do think that, the improvements that they made, it was a good effort, but bad execution. I just think it was bad execution. And I think that there are just underlying things with the code that just is old. I mean, it's old. I mean, it's just that simple. You know, the team building is definitely one, and just the immersion. I think just being immersed. I think maybe they could even hide a lot of the flaws with the franchise if they just immersed you in the mode. And I know, you know, the NBA 2K, ESPN, NFL 2K5, even when they had the features like the halftime shows, the weekly recaps with Chris Berman, all that, bringing that back into the game, it's probably a big effort. But I mean, if they did it all those years ago, why can't they do it now? I think that's always the question of the community, that we had all these features so long ago and they just got removed, and now we're just left here with, you know, fix Madden franchise hashtags. So that's gonna do it here for this video, and I'm sorry for some of you guys that are disappointed, but it's just inevitable. I think that, you know, we've just gotten to a point here with Madden that just is not fun beyond, you know, the first month of the game coming out. And obviously there are YouTubers that play it all year round, but that's how they make their living. For me, this isn't how I make my living, so I don't feel any attachment to the game. I obviously want the best for the game, and I do play this game for the fun of it and for you guys as well. You guys make it a lot more immersive also, and that's what I try to do on my side, including you guys as undrafted free agents, as NFL draft prospects. That's what makes it fun for me, and also fun for you guys. Gives you a chance to be in the game itself and watch it unfold. But at the same time, it's tough. It's definitely tough when there are things in the game that need to be fixed that just haven't been. So that's going to do it for the video. Let me know what you think of this video and this series ending down in the comment section below. What's next? Well, we do have some other series coming up. I do have my Coach Carousel Dynasty and NCAA. And then I will have my normal NCAA basketball series that I have been doing the last 3 years now. And I think this year we could add a little twist to it. So stay tuned for that. Hit subscribe, hit that like button. Thank you for rocking out with me in Madden this year. This was obviously my shortest Madden franchise I've ever done on this channel. So that speaks volumes to just where we are in Madden franchise. Hit subscribe, hit that like button. Stay tuned. Let's get it. Let's go.
It's too easy. I've been there, done it, seen it. Boy, all that like Keenan. Still got crack, they fiendin'. Flow still hot like Phoenix. Shine so bright, I'm gleaming. This off top, I'm tweaking. Fresh out the rat like Neiman. And I'm still trying to fight my demons. Cause we all gotta act like Tina. That's why I gotta ride with the Nina. Outside, it's a war going on.